Good evening, I'm Ari Melber, and our top story tonight is Trump immigration officials changing at least their rhetoric and some plans amid a growing backlash to those killings of 2 Americans. The administration backtracking from its early loud claims, like these over the weekend, that agents had acted totally correctly in the killing of Alex Preddy and other recent controversies. Tonight, the story is that they admit there were mistakes. And the new official that Donald Trump just sent to Minnesota, Tom Homan, rejecting the type of Trump defenders, including within the administration, who had been insisting initially that this was all an acceptable operation.
I do not want to hear that everything that's been done here has been perfect. No agency or organization is perfect.
Not perfect. It's a step that shows the pressure is working. And I will show you right now how that is measurable and why it's not the whole story. And we don't take anything from any government simply at face value when they're under this kind of pressure. But the street protests and Democrats using new tools in Washington and in the back room and sometimes public pressure from a growing group of Republicans, all of this adding up. Republicans see that gunning down Americans is not popular, to say the least. A growing majority of Americans now say ICE has gone too far. This is new polling from none other, if you look in the lower left, than Fox News' polling operation itself. That network, of course, is usually MAGA-friendly, but it's the same station that has been warning Trump this week, with conservatives on their air in various ways trying to tell Trump through the TV that he's already lost America here, and that lying about what is Donald Trump's public safety failures actually only makes them worse.
It does track with the other polls, and it suggests that while the administration is within its limits, its legal limits in this immigration crackdown and the dragnet that's going on, particularly out in Minnesota, it has hit its political limits.
I was a prosecutor. I used to watch these videos for a living. This guy is not a domestic terrorist.
If we say things that are obviously not true, the situation is going to get worse.
Trump has been caught saying a lot of things that are obviously not true. Lying directly about these victims, accusing victims of being terrorists, something that actually has a legal process and definition that was not met. These things, says that Republican senator, are making it worse. Now, Trump officials are changing their rhetoric, and they're claiming there are changes to the orders for ICE agents. Now, you think about the aggressive and escalating stance they have taken towards citizens on the streets. That's changed. They're now, according to Reuters, instructing ICE agents to only do what Trump on the campaign trail said would be the entire operation, only target immigrants with criminal cases. And they are forbidding other activity, as they're told here in all caps, quote, do not communicate or engage with agitators. Now, that's a written order. It could be changed very soon. It could be leaked or promoted to the press to try to offer something right now. But let's be clear, this written order admits the flawed approach that those agents were taking up until now. And if the administration later waters it down and reverses it, if they think that's the way to go after outrage may have cooled or people move on to other controversies, you remember when we were talking about invading Greenland? Well, this new order will still provide a public written baseline that advocates and others can try to hold these agents to, because just to say the obvious, the job of ICE agents is not to engage with agitators or patrol citizens and communities all day long. That has nothing to do with enforcing immigration and customs, which is what ICE does. Now, Minnesota is the big flashpoint, but the Trump administration is also trimming ICE operations in Maine, according to their Republican Senator Collins. And she's not the only member of Trump's party channeling the wide opposition to what ICE has been doing. It runs from the center to the right to the left. Here we see in ruby red Wyoming constituents pressing their Republican representative.
You should be incensed. Why are you not? There has been no investigation, and they are not doing any investigation.
You can see that politician wave to people yelling at her that she's a coward, just a little wave there. That's one of the few places, though, where you can at least credit the Republican lawmaker for showing up and facing voters at all, because you can only imagine what it would look like if they were holding open, free, and public town halls in Minnesota and Maine and these other places and allowing everyone to come and talk to their lawmakers. Republicans know they cannot outrun voters in this year's election, even if they can avoid town halls right now. And the reports are House Republicans fuming about DHS Chief Noem's leadership. Dems want to impeach her over the killings and these public safety failures. Remember, when the government comes in and kills people in avoidable ways, whether or not it's ever deemed a murder in an investigation, it's a public safety failure. The government is making things worse, not better. They're leading to Americans' deaths. And these are failures that vulnerable Republicans are aware of, Axios reports, putting them in this painful spot. Now, can Democrats actually break MAGA Republican loyalty to force, say, a vote on impeaching Noem, on removing her? And then could they even win over enough votes to do so, asking Republicans to defy Trump? Well, is it possible? We know the answer is yes. That legislative situation just happened a few months ago on Epstein. That was an issue where Donald Trump demanded loyalty. But by the time the Democrats built pressure and then forced a House vote, well, we know what happened. By the time it reached the Senate, Trump could not get the Republican leader, who you see on your screen, to even slow the process, to do him a solid. He also couldn't find a single senator to object. So it flew through the Senate, passing unanimously, Trump losing badly. That is a legislative history that haunts the White House's congressional whipping operation. Now, both these issues, of course, have victims, which do provide major stakes. But to be clear politically here, when I'm talking about how Congress works, the comparison is not that these issues are, quote unquote, similar. The thing that's similar is Donald Trump's weakening grip on congressional Republicans. We know that his congressional wall already cracked. So avoiding a vote to remove Noem is one thing. And the White House asking Republicans to dodge public statements might buy them some time. Asking them to pretend things are okay, you can see some Republicans are saying, we're not going to do that. Others may be a little quiet. Give them a couple days. That's part of politics. Unfortunately, even when there's politics involved in whether we're going to deal with the government killing Americans. But here's the point I'm reminding you tonight. If there is a no confidence vote in Noem's leadership, if Dems could force that by peeling off some Republicans, the same playbook they did on Epstein, well, that's a whole other issue. Because some Republicans are already signaling they want her out, that they could vote to do it. And others, when faced with the no confidence vote, don't exactly want to stand up and put on record, not knowing how many more Americans could be hurt, endangered, illegally detained, or killed, that they are fine with how things are going. Even Tom Homan says he's not fine with it. Now, Democrats are still in the minority, but they can fight. They have other extra tools if they want to use them. And that's, remember, what many Americans have been demanding across what is now this very clearly extreme second term, where Donald Trump's not doing the things he campaigned on. Prices are up. Problems are rampant. He's not just targeting the violent criminals who might have come over from other countries. He's not doing what he said he would do, but he is doing other things that some people underestimated or didn't think he could do, unleashing these kind of politicized, possibly illegal, definitely violent operations only in places largely where he thinks the opposition is, going off and indicting people he disagrees with, trying to crack elections as we know it. If enough people are under investigation or on trial or imprisoned, it's hard to have free and fair elections. And while anyone can quibble with one or two cases, and we try to report them all fairly, Donald Trump has now put over 14 people under investigation, including 2 members of the Federal Reserve. Nobody seriously thinks this is on the level. Faced with that and the ICE killings and the DHS killing, Democrats are seizing leverage, vowing that they will shut the government down tomorrow unless they get real action restricting ICE agents. Now, if the system is failing in tough times, people understandably ask, is this even fixable? Does speaking out or marching or pressure even work anymore? Well, what's striking here is that Minnesota has shown how the pressure is working. how people are standing up and showing courage, even as they've seen others gunned down in their very community. These mass protests and civic support groups are showing strength in the cold, strength in numbers, resilience that harkens back to a long American tradition. And that's just in Minnesota. We know there have been protests across all of this past year. They have broken records. The ability to hold these protests is a guardrail that people are using, as I've been reporting, even though we also have to tragically report that this government has tried very directly, admitted an agenda against the First Amendment, against peaceful protests, with federal agents menacing people, threatening them in broad daylight, and yet the people are marching. That effort, along with the particular way that facts and journalism and the terrible videos of some of these incidents about what the Trump agents are doing, has driven up the opposition I showed you. Trump's ICE plans are opposed by 59% of the public, and that's in Fox News' accounting. That's plus or minus 3. You could call it 62%. It's only getting worse. And these are people that include, statistically, folks who have been Trump voters in the past. Pressure works. This has been another tough week in America. It is not a time for false equivalence. It's not a time to just talk about the process like it might work in past eras. When we report on this, we have to level and be honest with you. They don't want it to work. They are trying to undermine it. And that starts at the top of the justice system, where I mentioned law breaking at DOJ on Epstein, and law breaking at DOJ when they won't even hold an investigation into the killing of Americans. And it goes all the way down to the streets, where these agents are clearly breaking the rules and the training requirements. Whether they're committing crimes is something that in our system has to be investigated. Some of them look like they're being caught on tape committing crimes. All we know is that their bosses started the week saying, nope, only the dead are the terrorists. But the week may not be ending that way. I want to bring in Che Komanduri, an Obama veteran, who's thought a lot about how these issues work. Che, without letting rhetoric and promises and claims that might be PR get too much credulous attention, there does seem to be a shift, and Democrats say they are fighting. What do you see shifting right now?
Yeah, I think as dark and as dreadful and as tragic as the events in Minnesota have been, it's actually been thrilling and inspiring to see the citizen action on the streets, to see the pushback. It's like watching the Ewoks take down the stormtroopers in Return of the Jedi. You know, there was a very famous sequence. I mean, I guess it was like only two weeks ago. It feels like years ago, when Stephen Miller quoted the movie Starship Troopers and talked about the iron law of force and strength. We should remember that Star Wars beats Starship Troopers, that moral clarity and courage and vision and resistance defeats fascism. And I think that's one of the great lessons that I take from Minnesota, and I think the country should take from Minnesota as well.
Simple question. There are protesters and leaders in Minnesota who say there's a lot more of them than there are of these so-called shock troops and agents. Is that true? And what does that mean in your sort of theory of politics right now?
Well, that was definitely the case in the civil rights movement. There were simply more of them than there were of the people who opposed them, even though the people who opposed them had violence and force, and in some cases, the law of Jim Crow behind them. What happened was people saw the images during the civil rights movement. Selma is a very good example of this, where for many Americans, that was the first time that they saw, you know, the hosing, the bulldogs, the violence, and what was being done to African Americans in the South. And that helped change public opinion towards the Civil Rights Act. The same thing I think is happening now in Minnesota. Americans are seeing that Donald Trump is not the president of law and order. He is the president of death and disorder. He is doing the opposite of what he has promised the American people on a number of fronts, including on immigration.
The effort to use the shutdown, to use the Nome impeachment, does it matter that everyone watched Donald Trump get rolled on Epstein, which, as you mentioned, might feel like a long time ago, that there are these loud threats and this talk of loyalty But if you actually can get to a vote, you could show up in the Senate and find out he has no friends.
Yeah, resistance to Donald Trump is possible, and Epstein showed that. And what occurred with Epstein was that the MAGA base itself did not like his actions. And I think you're starting to see as well MAGA podcasters, people like Joe Rogan, others saying, we do not like what we're seeing in Minnesota. This is simply going too far for us. And as a result of that, those divisions within the MAGA base manifest itself within the Republican Congressional Caucus. So I do think a very real possibility of a pushback on ICE can happen here. I think you can definitely get Republicans. Susan Collins did not like the presence of ICE in Maine. It definitely hurt her reelection prospects. And I do think that a lot of Republicans are looking at 2026 and saying, if we keep staying the course on this, we are doomed.
Che, thank you. I'm going to check back with you by the end of the hour. There's been also talk about Donald Trump's mental state. His former White House lawyer in the first term, Ty Cobb, has sounded the alarm on that and martial law. He's a very special guest, and we are actually very interested to hear what he has to say, given everything right now, when we're back in 90 seconds. We're joined now by Ty Cobb, who was a White House attorney in the first Trump administration and has DOJ experience as well. Welcome back.
Good to be with you, Ari. Thanks for having me.
When you look at what's transpired in Minnesota and what they're describing as a type of pullback right now, what do you think is important here to separate the noise from the facts?
I think it's very hard to look at the events of the past week without, feeling the humanity, the loss of life, the physical abuse of, female observers who were thrown to the ground, that, Alex Preddy, tried to intervene on behalf before he was executed within 30 seconds. I think, as you look back, it's hard for me to get into the Star Wars analogies because I just think it's too soon. I think it's still palpably painful. But I think what we have seen, of course, is this is in many ways not surprising. The strategy from the get-go has been to have a very disruptive, very violent, sort of terroristic campaign to unsettle Americans, and then make what seem like changes, going from Bovino to Homan, like a modulation, but it's not a modulation. The policy is the same. Homan, of course, is somebody who is on tape taking a $50,000 cash bribe, not somebody who's coming in to impose high moral standards. But we're taking a little bit of a relief thing here, and I think the danger is exhaling. I think people need to remain vigilant and remain cautious and understand that the attack on the states from this invading force is going to persist, and it's only going to grow between now and the elections, which are the real target, as Bondi proved by trying to extort election data in exchange for partial withdrawal, like we saw yesterday with the remarkable search of the Georgia polling area.
Well, let me do this, Ty. We have that. I want to get to that, and you're drawing the line. You're reminding people that just because the government says something's about immigration doesn't mean that's the case. And we all have to be thoughtful, skeptical Americans. So I want to get to that, but I want to just actually finish another question for you on the immigration format, and then we'll go exactly where you did. There are these reports from the Atlantic that DHS, which is a massive, important part of the Homeland Security and other projects, basically isn't really functioning under Trump. The president, quote, has allowed a widening rift, months of acrimony, so things that they say are behind the scenes that we haven't always had in public, have left veteran officials at DHS, including those who basically support the core of the deportation goals, astonished at the dysfunction, blurred leadership roles, no clear chain of command. Does that ring true to you, or what view do you bring to that, having worked for a time inside the first Trump White House? Because there's everything we are seeing, including the killing of these people. And then there's everything we're not seeing, the negative space in the painting that could include failures that endanger Americans in all sorts of other ways.
Sure, DHS is very dysfunctional, and I think that's in large part because it's not really being run by by Kristi Noem. It's being run by Stephen Miller. She's acting at his whim to execute the sort of racist, violent chaos that is essential to tyranny. And I think what you see is, I mean, not only have you seen enormous expenditures, well into the billion dollar range, by DHS, which makes the per capita deportations enormously more expensive under Trump than they ever were under Obama. It's ridiculous how much money ICE has and has been lavished with by Republicans in Congress. But there's very little coordination beyond the top level saying go do your worst. And we're seeing that. And within DHS, you're seeing FEMA. You've got FEMA, which where they are so far behind on North Carolina and tragedies around the country where they are supposed to be actually helping people. Where no money's getting to the people, roads aren't being built, bridges aren't being repaired. It's a disaster right now.
Yeah, and that's the stakes of it. This is what you mentioned, that the real agenda, what critics and the objections called a ransom or a shakedown or potentially illegal extortion of the voting lists in Minnesota. And then that comes against this breaking news over the week that's had all this breaking news about a search of Georgia election site. So I want to get exactly into that. You brought it up. You've agreed to stay. Ty Cobb on what he says is the real hidden Trump agenda that people have to be ready for going into voting when we come back. We are back with a veteran of the Trump White House's first term, Ty Cobb, who has been warning about potentially lawless behavior here. And Ty, you brought this up. I just want to bring everyone up to speed. There's been so much happening. When you look at whether Trump is not just lying about past elections, but trying to abuse power, we have a disturbing report. FBI agents were seen searching a Georgia elections office, and officials say they left with many ballots, pallets of ballots. I want to be clear. This is for, as best we know, a past election, not the upcoming midterms. But they're trying to get physical ballots from when Trump lost 2020, tabulator tapes for the voting machines, ballot images, what they view as an initial count, something that could, of course, be debated depending on how you count, and the voter rolls from there. Tulsi Gabbard, who has been a very controversial Trump loyalist, was also spotted here outside that same facility last night.
This is the Director of National Intelligence that is affirmatively moved to cut back the Foreign Malign Influence Center on elections. What the heck is she doing on the FBI serving a domestic warrant? If this doesn't concern the heck out of every American, it sure as hell should. This is a person who has got no business interfering in elections.
Ty, you brought up what could be abuse of DOJ powers to try to get voter rolls out of Minnesota. Then we have what is legally a more aggressive action of actually going to execute this search. Armed federal agents going into state voter facilities. Explain why you brought this up and why you say there's more to the agenda than just deportations.
Certainly. So I brought it up because, as Senator Warner pointed out, it's really shocking what happened at that search yesterday, and Tulsi Gabbard's presence it makes it even more so. Keep in mind, the Justice Department has sued 24 states or jurisdictions for voter data, almost all of them in blue states or blue precincts, and has been largely denied. Federal courts in California and Oregon have refused to do it. In Minnesota, there have been efforts that are underway and under consideration that will likely be denied. There's a pending case in Georgia, but they got tired of waiting, so they just went in and took it on their own. And keep in mind, these are from 2020. This is all about Trump trying to rewrite history consistent with his fantasy that he won an election that he lost by millions of votes. And that everybody knows this is the state where he demanded that the Secretary of State find him almost 12,000 votes in the aftermath of the election. So this is intensely corrupt. And Tulsi Gabbard's presence, as Senator Warner said, should concern every American. I mean, she's either misled the committees to which she's supposed to report by failing to alert them of any foreign involvement in this, or she's involved the intelligence community in a domestic search warrant, which is a bright line illegal act. So this
that was
is
a
very
big part of Watergate.
That's true.
Nixon saying, hey, CIA's got extra powers. Yeah, they do for espionage abroad. When he tried to get them in to muscle the FBI, that was one of the damning parts of the tapes.
And this is why I say, don't exhale on, Stephen Miller pretending that, he's got religion or that Tom Homans is somehow here to help. The reality is this is just a shift. I mean, within 24 hours of those statements, the FBI is illegally seizing these records. Now they had a warrant. It'll be fascinating to figure out what allegations they made to get that warrant.
Well, let's show you on that. We got a Georgia state senator actually discussing this and whether the warrant was even accurate. Take a look.
It's very possible, and we need to stress this, that the FBI lied in their warrant to try to get these ballots or use some small irregularity to justify a wholesale raid. All I can say about that is you have federal judges all throughout the country who have chastised the DOJ and federal agencies for lying to courts. So this could be the very same thing. Obviously, we don't know enough yet, but this is extremely alarming.
Democratic State Senator McLaurin there. What do we do if they are already getting away with it? If they have shown the Trump officials, DOJ is breaking laws, I mentioned, that's documented. They go to court and they mislead, evade. Some judge had to sign off on this. They claim they got the warrant through. And what does that tell us about having a public ready to defend voting if the judges won't?
Well, it tells us we need to stay in court and we need to be aggressive in court. Keep in mind, as the state senator indicated, shocking that the FBI might have lied. We have Judge Schlitz, who in Minnesota yesterday found that the government has violated 96 court orders in the month of January alone. More, he said, than many federal agencies have in their entire lifetime. You've got the Columbia study group that has found that over 40 court orders have been defied by the Justice Department. That they routinely lie and have been accused of lying now by many federal judges of both parties. So we're in desperate times, and the only transparency that we can get is what we get judges to give us, because we're not getting any from the administration.
Yeah, and in the run-up to the Jan 6th insurrection, you had long left the White House, but we know that Trump threw out many ideas, but some he backed off of. There were lawyers, you know his lawyers, who said they could go farther than many people think are honest. Some people were sanctioned, as we know later. But even Giuliani, we have the evidence and the testimony, said, well, we can't have the military go seize ballots. Does he have anyone left around him like that now? And if not, do you think it is a reasonable expectation, or more likely than not, that there will be an effort to misuse armed federal powers to interfere in the midterms or the general election in 28?
Well, I would argue we've already seen that in the assassinations of Good and Preddy. But I would also say, no, he doesn't have anybody around. I mean, so we've got Homans there allegedly in Minneapolis, to try to turn down the heat. But Bondi went there today and talked about enforcing the law, indicting people who allegedly were harming ICE agents or threatening ICE agents, and then parading their pictures in a way that's so contrary to Justice Department policy. The judge in the case expressed extreme alarm. It's a very lawless Justice Department. I think the Carol Leonnig book with her partner that came out about how the Justice Department has been shredded under these people is an important read for all Americans. We're in very difficult times, and the courts are our only protection because we have Republican senators and congressmen who are neutered by their own cowardice and graft.
Bondi lied famously and infamously about Epstein. Blanche lied last weekend about the slain American, making demonstrably false claims about him. Noam, of course, called him a terrorist. As you mentioned, they've softened that, and you've given us your lens that that's merely buying time, not a fundamental change. Do you think proper proceedings in the future could disbar Bondi and Blanche? Do you think there's any role for the legal community to say, we will return to regular order and it will be enforced?
So I think our expectations need to be tempered a little bit. I mean, I would be content if we just got rid of them. Accountability, notwithstanding, it would be delicious to have some accountability for the wreckage and the damage that's been done to our Constitution and the rule of law. I'm not sure we're going to get there, but if we can just get them out and find honorable people to serve in these positions as we've had historically, I'd be greatly relieved.
Understood. Ty Cobb, we really appreciate your time. I hope you'll come back. We have these colloquies. We get into some depth, and you have a lot of knowledge about all of the background. Thank you. We will be right back. Thank you. Donald Trump is facing many challenges as he just marked his first year of the second term. That's from affordability and broken promises to these immigration crises. Che Komanduri, the Obama campaign veteran, is back with us, and we're joined by Angie Wong, Republican Executive Committee woman in Miami, chairwoman of the Capitol Hill Fight Club. Welcome to both of you. Angie, is it wrong to have federal agents shooting down Americans, killing two, the way we've seen?
Well, what should have happened was local PD helping out the federal agents during a shakedown like that. Federal agents should not even have to do that, but they didn't have the cooperation of the Minnesota PD. So that's just what happens.
Well, the question, and I'll let you take time, but just given where we are as a country right now, you're talking about things that could have done, hypotheticals, but we all saw it happen now twice. 2 Americans killed this way. Is it wrong?
Well, it was never going to be pretty. President Trump and his administration has the mandate as of November 2024 to remove illegal aliens and criminals out of our country. We knew that was not going to be pretty. We knew everyone had their cell phones out. We knew deportation was never going to look great. And those are the optics, unfortunately. But here's the thing. In Minnesota,
well, you're bringing, again, if you answer me, then we can go forward, and I want to get Che in as well. But no, I didn't ask about whether it was pretty or the optics. I asked whether it was wrong. And there's a large police force. There's a large federal agent force. Some of them make mistakes. Some of them do things that are wrong. We're trying to understand here as a country where the accountability is. So I don't want to misquote you. It sounds like you're not ready to say it was wrong.
Well, look, it's always tragic when someone dies in a situation like this. Had I been in Alex Pretty's situation, I would have announced to law enforcement agents that I was carrying a concealed weapon. That is what I would do if I was being pulled over by a cop. He didn't do that. He went to a protest with a loaded weapon versus a sign. Or because he's a nurse, why didn't he bring a first aid kit?
Well, why didn't he bring a first aid kit? He was shot repeatedly in the back. There were 10 shots fired in 5 seconds. I don't know that a nurse first aid kit would have brought him back. But the real point, and that we can get into the videos, but the real point is this is the ICE actions of this administration. And so you're in the political conversation. You're not saying that this was a wrong outcome.
Look, I mean, there was never going to be a great outcome if you are going to be attacked, if you are going to, I'm talking about ICE agents, there's going to be a response, right? And when they know that there was a gun involved, unfortunately, these things do happen. And it happens to civilians, not just in protests, but unfortunately in various cities around the country.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, he has a Second Amendment right and was a lawful carrier of that weapon. Che, your response tonight.
Where do we even begin? First of all, Donald Trump does not have a mandate to send masked enforcers to seize and in some cases kill American citizens. He has a mandate to bring order to the border. He does not have a mandate to put ICE officers en masse on the streets of Minnesota, racially profiling people, dragging elderly men in their underwear out into the snow. None of that is anything that he has a mandate for. That is absolutely absurd to say that this is what he has a mandate for. He has a mandate to bring order to the border and to lower people's grocery bills. He has done neither of those things. What he has done is he is sending masked agents of the government who are poorly trained, whose identities are not known to us, who do not cooperate with law enforcement. This is something where Angie is completely wrong. Minnesota had told the New York Times that most of the people who, the undocumented people who ICE has apprehended in Minnesota were actually apprehended by the Minnesota police and then turned over to ICE. So this entire operation is completely counterfeit. It is designed to sow fear and intimidation into the American people and to convince the American people not to resist Donald Trump.
And Che, I gave Angie several questions in a row. I'll ask you. when we look at the public reaction, that Fox poll has a higher share of people saying they've gone too far now than months ago. 59% is a overwhelming view that this is too aggressive. And both of you can take a listen to some of the pushback that we've heard on the same outlet behind the poll on Fox News. Take a look.
I do believe that there was an unforced error with regard to the administration and their initial accounts of this shooting. Those accounts are not borne out by those videotapes.
I think that the extravagant statements by these DHS officials, ICE officials, and the DHS secretary over the weekend didn't play well.
It is politically disastrous for the president and also not the kind of civil society we need to live in.
Now, is ICE perfect? They're not. Can they do a better job? They can. Do I think that, some of the optics at times, do I think that going into Home Depots and arresting people there is a good idea? I don't.
We certainly should not be labeling him as being a domestic terrorist who is going to execute cops. There's no evidence to support that.
Such polling as there is, Brett, suggests that people think ICE and DHS have gone too far, and they're not winning the PR war in Minnesota.
Che, where does all that fit into a week where we've seen a lot of shift?
Yeah, just look at the images themselves. Why are they wearing masks? The police do not wear masks. The police in Minnesota do not wear masks. They don't wear masks where I live. They don't wear masks where Angie lives. The FBI does not wear masks. As far as I know, the DEA does not wear masks. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms do not wear masks. Why are these men masked? And it is not a extreme thing to say they shouldn't be masked. That is something that Americans do not like. They do not like these masked men who show no identification, who show no warrants, who use deadly force coming into their neighborhoods. The goal is to bring order to the border, not to bring disorder to Home Depot, as Sean Hannity pointed out.
And Angie, these operations have been highly selectively politically polarized. We covered earlier tonight the seemingly lawless request that the administration would back off Minnesota if they could get voter roll information. We've seen ICE agents go out and be sort of very menacing with people. And yet this policy, this treatment is not being deployed in some of the states that have the highest number of total undocumented immigrants, states like Texas and Florida, where you are. If, and this is a macro question, we talked a bit about these terrible killings of Americans, but if this type of presence is so great, why isn't Trump deploying it in places like Texas and Florida where there are more undocumented immigrants, raw number and per capita, than Minnesota?
Yeah, I was asking myself exactly the same question. In Texas, there were 88,000 apprehensions of illegal aliens and criminals. Here in Florida, 34,000. Why aren't we seeing the same type of protests here in these states? And I have to just always go back to
I'm asking why hasn't he surged federal agents there? That's what he has not done, which raises, again, I'm not playing word games here. I'm talking about reality and real people affected. If these are great policies, the way ICE has surged in Minnesota, why isn't he doing it in Florida, where you're a visible Republican?
Well, the clear answer is because our governors are working with federal agents. Our local PDs are working with law enforcement from the federal agencies. And that's why you don't see this kind of rioting. You don't see the protests. You don't see the killings, because we're actually working hand to hand. They're going into the prisons. They're saying, hey, are there any illegal aliens here? Because we like to deport them. And our local enforcement here in Florida are handing them over. So there's no drama whatsoever. There's nothing. There's no rioting. I don't see a lot of protests here, although we did see one or two early on. But that's when federal government and local governments work together.
Do you think there'd be protests if they killed two Americans in Florida? You think there might be a reaction to that?
I think there's going to be outrage for sure. And even President Trump acknowledges that. He said today that he's ordering a full investigation into these shootings. He's actually toned down. He wants to de-escalate. He understands the politics of it, but also the on-the-ground realities of what it is to be an ICE agent.
I'm running over on time. Che, quickly, final word.
Yeah, I mean, very simply, you can end racial profiling now. You can end the masking of agents now. You can have accountability for the ICE agents who killed Renee Good and Alex Peretti now. All of those things are simple things now. And I would bet that in Angie's district in Florida, those items would be very popular. I don't think they would like it one bit if masked men came into their neighborhoods, racially profiled them, and treated them the way ICE has treated the people of Minnesota.
These are tense times. We heard views from veterans of both parties. Che Komanduri, Angie Wong, thanks to both of you. We'll be right back. And now a word from the mayor of Minneapolis.
One great American city is experiencing an invasion. That is an invasion on our democracy, on our republic, and on each and every one of us. People's constitutional rights have been trampled. Thousands of federal agents have descended on a city that has 600 police officers. If we do not speak up, if we do not step out, it will be your city that is next.
Mayor Frey speaking about what he says is the implication of this threat from the federal government to many cities around the country. We wanted to play that warning tonight. We'll be right back.
Yeah, grind mode on, can't kill my drive. Turn the pressure up, I come alive. Grind mode on, I don't fold, I don't quit. Hunger in my chest, every beat I commit. Eyes on the prize, no sleep till it's won. World in my hands when the grind mode's on. Wake up with a vision, I'm locked on the target. Turn pain into fuel, I'm a flame, I spark it. No shortcuts here, I embrace every test. Pressure on my shoulders, still I handle it best. I was made for the climb, every loss, every scar. Built me in the steel, now I shine like a star. If the road gets rough, I just double my speed. Ambition on 10, I was born to lead. Grind mode on, I don't fold, I don't quit. Hunger in my chest, every beat I commit. Eyes on the prize, no sleep till it's won. World in my hands when the grind mode's on. They said limits exist, but I shattered the frame. Every wall in my path is just fuel for the frame. Discipline heavy, but my spirit is free. I don't chase success, success chases me. I'm the storm and the calm, I'm the rise, I'm the proof. Every bar that I drop is the grind in the booth. Blood, sweat, tears, that's the code I trust. I don't wait for the crown, I earn it, I must.